words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be aligned with your love, O God, our strength, our courage, and our freedom. Amen. I have the good fortune these days of preparing several couples for marriage in the next 3.5 months. Now, one exercise I use is to draw a 3 or 4 generational family map or genogram of each person in the couple. So each piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, is filled with circles and squares representing male and female members of each family, with all sorts of notes about health patterns in the family, big stories in the family's history, moments of great anxiety, moments of great breakthroughs, as well as all sorts of lines indicating strong alliances or allegiances or conflicts within the families. So you can imagine that both sheets of paper are as full as a city map when all the questions have been posed and responded to. Then, a moment of revelation takes place when I put those 2 pieces of paper beside one another and introduce a clean piece of paper below the 2. And onto that clean piece of paper, I draw lines extended from the family maps above, and I say, this represents your life together. Now, I ask, what will you bring down from these genograms we've just created to be strengths in your new marriage relationship? And what traits, practices, and patterns do you want to keep up in those family of origin maps? Now, just a note about squirrely experiences in any relationships. That happens when the spirit of someone shows up from the crowded genograms uninvited into your current clean sheet of paper. This is where the marriage covenant begins to reveal itself. True epiphanies take place right there in the moment in my office as the couple express what they want and what they do not want to comprise their future together. May I suggest that that is where all of us can consider that we are this morning. Not only as you and I begin a new calendar year, but as all of us look forward to a new relationship with a new rector of All Saints Church. And as we realized yesterday at our Francis Factor Day, in which 200 people gathered for most of the day to really learn some meaty theology from videotaped presentations of theologians Richard Rohr, Ilya Delio, and Shane Claiborne. There are significant numbers of new people coming every week to All Saints Church to be embraced by and to embrace the work of healing, inclusion, peace, and justice going on here. And actually, this is my theological belief, every day God is offering to you and me a fresh, clean piece of paper to declare our covenant with God, with history, with ourselves, with the enterprise of Christianity and religion in general, and also with the global human family and with this planet, this fragile planet, our island home. Now, finally, as a preparatory remark, please note that we are gathered today at the beginning of the season of Epiphany in the church liturgical calendar, the season in which we are reminded that our relationships with God and with one another and with ourselves have those really wonderful moments when what is at stake is really something sacred. And the sacred nature of any given moment shows forth its light and its reality, which is what the word epiphany in Greek means, showing forth or making manifest, or letting your little light shine. I think a lot about getting a tattoo right here on my inside of my forearm. And the latest version is Rabbi Heschel's amazing truth. In every moment, something sacred is at stake. I so frequently move through life preoccupied with the future or lamenting about something in the past or bored with something that's going on right now. And that, I think, would wake me up to realize that in absolutely every moment, there's something sacred going on. And whenever you and I have that realization, that's an epiphany. So with the church calendar as our teacher, we are led every Sunday after January 6th, the first Sunday of the Epiphany, the feast of the baptism of Jesus, to hear the baptismal story of Jesus as one of the great epiphanies. We hear that the central word in every gospel account is the word beloved. Depending on which gospel writer you're reading, either Jesus or everyone around Jesus heard God say, when Jesus comes up out of the river water after being baptized by John the Baptist, "Jesus, you are my beloved." It's almost as if God is saying to Jesus, "Jesus, the most important thing I will ever say to you is this: you are my beloved. Now go organize your life and ministry around that central truth." So back to my genogram writing, my premarital counseling. When a couple recently preparing to be married this coming weekend, when they turned to this blank sheet of paper and I asked them what they wanted to bring down into their marriage covenant and what they wanted to keep up in the old genograms, one of the persons said, "I always want to look at my new spouse and other people through the lens of grace." Yes. Amen. And I too had an epiphany in that very moment. And I thought, because I was thinking about this morning's upcoming sermon, that's what the baptism of Jesus was about. And that is what our baptisms are all about. And that is what our life as Christians are about, to look at everything through the lens of the beloved. You see, we are going to baptize people into Jesus' baptism in just a few moments, which means that we are baptizing them to hear the same thing that Jesus heard: "You are my beloved." Henry Nouwen says that the most important thing any human being can think about yourself, and the most important thing that you can think about someone else, is, do you know you are beloved? And do you know that every person you see in your life and on the street is beloved of God? Do you and I live our lives through the lens of the beloved? I love to drive fast. And when I have to stop for pedestrians going across the street, it's always slightly irritating to me. Ed, at every moment, something sacred is at stake. Stopping to let pedestrians cross the street. Turn that into a moment of reflection, particularly if that person is not particularly attractive to you. particularly if that person is someone in whom Jesus is heavily disguised. And several years back, when I would see someone who was obviously homeless or talking to themselves or to an imaginary friend, and I was stopping, I began to think, that's one of your brothers. That's one of your sisters in the human family. The lens of the beloved say that person is beloved of God. There are many, 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 many ways of understanding what love is and what living the life of the beloved is all about. But I think all attempts fall short of love's true power when there's not some attempt to understand what God was saying at Jesus' baptism and what God says to every one of us. For the purpose of this sermon, I would like for you to consider that God's love for Jesus and God's love for everything that God made was an act on God's part of non-fear. There's no fear in God. There's no love in God's fear. It was an act of self-giving. God was giving the divine self to Jesus and to you and me. And God was giving God's divine self to us in the service of our freedom. No greater litmus test for loving someone is there than giving your love to someone so that they will be free to be themselves apart from what you want them to be. When your love is not requiring somebody else to be what you want them to be, then you're loving. Thomas Merton, my North Star, said, love is our true self. When we love, we're being our true self. Love is my true identity. Love is my true character. Love is my true name. Our love for God is in fact God's love working in us. Our love for other people is in fact God's working in us. It is a response to and a participation of God's love for us. And the only way we can begin to understand God is through the experience of love, not through concepts of fear. To say that I am made in the image of God is to say that love is the reason for my existence. For God is love. God is my true identity. But life can be reduced to a purely egotistical need that cries out for immediate satisfaction or manipulates others more or less cleverly in order to get what we want. But the plain truth is this, that that's not love. Love is not a matter of trying to get what you want. The insistence on always having what you want, on always being satisfied, on always being fulfilled, makes love impossible. To love, you have to climb out of the cradle. You have to climb out of your immaturity, your infantilism, where everything is about getting and everything is about me. And we have to grow up to the maturity of giving without concern for getting anything special in return. Love is not a deal. It is a self-offering. It is not marketing. It is a form of worship. Your ego is not love. My favorite colleague staff garment is a t-shirt that Isaac Ruelas, one of our youth ministers, wears, which reads, "Your ego is not your amigo." Your ego is not love's amigo. John the Baptist says that Jesus is coming to separate the wheat from the chaff. Those fear-based fundamentalists interpret that to be one more argument for the fact that Jesus is going to send people to hell. That's not what that's about. That is about Jesus, or God incarnate, coming into your life and separating the wheat from the chaff, the ego from the love. Love will set you free. But first, it'll eat up your ego, your egocentricity. And that hurts like hell, particularly if you love yourself more than you love to love others unconditionally. All love is divine. There's not a human love versus a divine love. There's just human love that's messed up by ego. And those who love are more alive and more real than they were when they did not love. So each of us has this deep capacity for love. And when we love, that brings real peace, much more than any of the anesthetics that the culture and marketing economy offer us. Finally, love, to put the lenses of the beloved on, love almost always must be understood on 4 levels. Everything of truth has to be understood on 4 levels. Personal, we are called to love ourselves. Every time we get caught up in fear and anxiety and self-doubt, we are called to remember, you are beloved. Interpersonal, we are called to see absolutely everyone with belovedness. And also the 3rd and 4th levels, institutional and cultural. We always have to examine our political policies and our cultural norms to see if they are revealing belovedness. Political love, public policy love, cultural love is called justice. That is why at this church in the next 3.5 months, we are going to school about everything that does not communicate the belovedness of other people. Today, at the Rector's Forum, we had the brilliant Reza Aslan talking about Islamophobia, where white supremacist Christians who love to go on cable news and talk about banning Muslims from this country, that's not the beloved. We're going to have Bishop Gene Robinson here, the first openly gay bishop in the history of Christianity, talking about LGBTQ openness. Where that kind of bigotry resides, that is not the beloved. We have an action today to celebrate what Barack Obama, that courageous, beloved person, did about guns this past week. We have people coming in to talk about Black Lives Matter and white supremacy. Tim Wise and Brian Stevenson are going to be here in the next 5 weeks to help us. We're going to address climate crisis. My brothers and sisters, you and I have been given toxic genograms about Islamophobia, about gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, about guns, about race, about white supremacy, and about climate crisis. And God has given us a fresh piece of paper and said, turn that paper into the beloved. Can I hear an amen? Amen. Today, when these children receive the baptism of Jesus, you receive the baptism of Jesus. You receive the lens of the beloved. You and I are called to epiph in the season of Epiphany. That means whether you have a tattoo on your arm or something engraved in your heart, in every moment, something beloved is at stake. Amen.